Hi, this is Rick from For Community, creating community spaces so you can connect with others and also with God. I was coming into the gym the other day, just minding my own business, listening to the audiobooks that I like to listen to at the gym, and I found, or at least I saw, a $20 bill blown up against the curb beside my van. And in that moment, it made me feel really awkward because, it wasn't mine. It had to belong to somebody, but there it was, like free money sitting on the ground. Who's going to deny free money sitting on the ground? So I looked around, I paused, I held it up above my head for all to see, which was pretty silly. I'm sure I looked like a total idiot. I didn't put it in my pocket. I got in my van, I put it on my seat beside me, and then I considered what to do. Because in my younger days, $20 was a really big deal. As a matter of fact, not too long ago, $20 was a really big deal. And I've experienced the pain in my younger years of losing $20 and not being able to buy groceries for the week back in my super broke days when I was much thinner, by the way. So I had this real battle going on between my head and my heart. My head was telling me that it was an act of foolishness attempting to find the owner, but my heart was reminding me of past experiences. And so there I was in my van, having this battle between my head and my heart. And then I felt even dumber because I'm spending too much time sitting in my van in the parking lot in front of the community center. And so because my head and my heart were still fighting, I left that $20 on the seat, still not knowing what to do about it as I drove home. And then when I got home, I took that $20 from my seat and I put it on my kitchen counter, and there it sat for about a week or so. And then it moved to my desk where my wife had questions like, why is there a $20 bill just sitting on the counter now sitting on your desk? And I asked her to help me figure this out because the battle between my head and my heart, which is now absolutely ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And my wife refuses to help me by picking it up and putting it in her wallet. Instead, she leaves it on my desk, looking at me as I try to sort through what I'm going to do with this thing. It's still sitting on my desk right beside me. I think one day I'm probably going to frame this thing and hang it on my wall just to make sure it's off my desk and I get the space back. Okay, enough about my pure, absolute silliness and my emotional instability and immaturity. What about you? Have you ever had an argument between your head and your heart and you got stuck? Kind of like I am. What was your problem and how did you resolve it? This video is based on my interpretation of Proverbs chapter 1 verses 8 through 19. In this passage, we learn something about a similar conflict going on inside of all of us all the time. Proverbs 1 verses 8 through 19. My child, listen when your father corrects you. Don't neglect your mother's instruction. What you learn from them will crown you with grace and be a chain of honor around your neck. My child, if sinners entice you, turn your back on them. They may say, come and join us. Let's hide and kill someone. Just for fun, let's ambush the innocent. Let's swallow them alive like the grave. Let's swallow them whole like those who go down to the pit of death. Think of the great things we'll get. We'll fill our houses with all the stuff we take. Come, throw in your lot with us. We'll all share the loot. My child, don't go along with them. Stay far away from their path. They rush to commit evil deeds. They hurry to commit murder. If a bird sees a trap being set, it knows to stay away. But those people set an ambush for themselves. They are trying to get themselves killed. Such is the fate of all who are greedy for money. It robs them of life. This is so important. This is the big deal of the text right here. Such is the fate of all who are greedy for money. It robs them of life. Here's the general gist of what I want to share in this video as I prep us for our Sunday discussions. I want to talk about the effect of greed on our values. You're right, greed hardly shows up in the passage until that very last sentence there. So this is my interpretation of this text. I've got two things to share with you all about this passage to help us generate some discussion for when we meet on Sunday at 1:30 or 6 o'clock. Ask for the Zoom link. One of the arguments, one of the opinions that I'm going to be sharing on Sunday to see if it generates some discussion is that this passage is all about greed. And when we're not aware of the greed that kind of lives inside of us all the time, how that affects us and how those greedy instincts that are constantly inside of us, are constantly wrestling for control of us, what they do to our sense of values, and how closely or how far it brings us from living a life based on values and getting us to the life that we actually want to live. So I want 2 points about how to figure out what greed does to us really as human beings. First of all, the first point is actually just about context. The text says, "My child, listen when your father corrects you. Don't neglect your mother's instruction. What you learn from them will crown you with grace and be a chain of honor around your neck." While we're reading through Proverbs, think about them in this context. It is as though a dad is writing these, and he's writing these to his child who's just about to launch. As this child is just about to launch, the dad is giving the child words to live by. That's what Proverbs is. They're not promises. Proverbs are not promises. I mean, parents would love to be able to steer their kids entirely away from pain and loss, but they can't. Life's not fair. There's never any guarantees. So Proverbs aren't promises. They're best practices and generalities. So it's a dad writing to a child about to launch, knowing the dad has limitations of not being able to protect his child from all the pains of adulthood and beyond, but wanting to pass along something so that they have the best chance of living that great life they want to live. That's what we have here in this book called Proverbs. I really wish these were promises, but they're not. They're puzzles. Just like life is a puzzle. They're puzzles and generalities to steer us away from harm and self-sabotage and steer us in the direction of living our best life. That's the book of Proverbs. So here comes the very first piece of wisdom, this principle, a generalization from a dad to his child who's just about to launch into adulthood, living as an independent. The very first piece of wisdom is this: don't kill anyone. Wow, that's good advice, Dad. That's not anywhere in my head to do. But okay, I'll keep that in mind. Okay, that's what it sounds like, but we're going to puzzle this through to discern that this whole passage is also talking about greed, the greed that lives in all of us. So here's my second point. Greed is a part of us that strongly competes for the steering wheel. The whole passage ends with the sentence, "Such is the fate of all who are greedy for money. It robs them of life." Now here's the thing. Are any of us going to be enticed to gang up and kill someone? Anyone in 4 community going to do this? Anyone who typically watches my videos, or anyone of us, are we going to be enticed to gang up together and kill someone? That's pretty doubtful, highly doubtful. What about the people who are likely to be readers of this through the years? Do you think that anyone who is likely to read the Proverbs through the years would have any kind of intent to kill somebody? Like, is that the intended audience for a book of wisdom? Likely not. I mean, I hope so. I would hope that at some point during the thousands of years that this thing has existed, someone might say, wow, I was enticed to kill someone by ambushing them to take all that they had and keep it for myself. But then I read this passage and I changed my mind. It changed my life. I mean, it's been around for thousands of years, so maybe, but likely that's not the intended audience. Remember, there is a lot to puzzle out in Proverbs. Proverbs are puzzles. And so what's the puzzle here? The violence isn't the issue. The violence is the symptom. What's underneath the symptom? The issue is greed. And we're going to see the issue of greed come up all through the book of Proverbs. There's a lot of stuff on finance through the book of Proverbs. And this is going to be a repeated issue throughout. Where there is unchecked greed, there is the potential of all manner of symptoms, which may include violence and may include practically anything else, but violence sure does get our attention, and maybe that's why that's here. Here's how I've seen greed show up in my practice. The pursuit of status and money has replaced the priority of values. And that pursuit has dominated an entire adult life until someone reaches their mid-50s to 60s, and then they're like, uh-oh, I have no relationship with my kids. I have no relationship with my spouse. My spouse doesn't even want to live with me anymore. We're living separate lives as it is in the same house. Among siblings. Wow. Helping siblings work through how they treat each other while dividing an inheritance. For some families, they act toward each other like they're all scheming against each other, scamming them out of what belongs to them. It breaks relationships permanently. They can stay angry for years. Greed is a liar. And it's a liar because it has its own voice. Greed promises us a better life, stability, the experience of something great. But greed also has a blinding effect. It doesn't allow us to look at the collateral damage of relationships and values. It skews ideas of ROI and opportunity cost. Greed becomes a lot of noise in our head that drowns out our sensibility and those softer emotions that we could use as a GPS. And suddenly, one day, hopefully, we get a clue and we realize that there's a great deal of distance between the life we're living and where our values are, or the life we actually want to be living. We get a clue and say, uh-oh, I let greed at the steering wheel and now I'm kind of lost. So this passage is another puzzle, as most of the book of Proverbs is, and this passage isn't about violence. Although if the shoe fits, wear it. Don't gang up on people and beat them up for their stuff. That's not going to go well for you. But that message probably isn't for you, because I'm like preaching to the choir here. You're probably not ganging up on people anyways. I think this is something that is really relevant to us. The voice of greed in all of us. And I think it's something that may be worth talking about on Sunday. Greed has a voice. I think it's important for us to own that idea. Greed isn't just this passive thing that's inside of us that we need to contend with from time to time. Greed is active. I'm not saying we have DID and we've got multiple personalities inside of us and there's actual voice in our head. But if we don't think about greed as though it has a voice, we're not giving it enough awareness to how much power it actually has over us. It triggers us into actions. There's an actual amygdala response to greed sometimes. It turns on our fight instinct. It attaches itself to our core value of self-preservation, and it makes us act in a way that if we don't get something or achieve something, it's like the experience of facing off with death. And it's a loud voice. It's a voice that creates so much noise in our head that it moves us towards doing things that are not in alignment with our values and the life that we actually want to live. It is a demon for us to wrestle with. And I don't mean like a spiritual demon coming from outside of us sent by the devil. That's not what I mean. Greed is a part of us. It's part of our sinful nature. It is us. And if we don't get it in check, it may lead us to a life where our primary love is the stuff and the money we're pursuing, and then we've lost our relationships and we have no clue where our values are. Greed's a big deal. So I suppose the thing it murders is actually us. And that is indeed what the text tells us, that greed steals our life. We are the thing that our greed murders. We lose our life. As we continue through Proverbs, this theme is going to continue to come up, and we're going to see it shaded in different lights. Before us is a path toward a life lived in harmony with values and people around us, or a path that leads to the death of our values and the relationships around us as we replace those things with the pursuit of that, wherever that voice of greed is leading us towards. This is a really big deal. So maybe this gives us enough to talk about on Sunday. Where do you see greed speaking to you? I can answer that question very quickly. I know the stuff that I really want, and I know what would happen to my harmony with my wife if I pursued those things. So where do you see greed speaking to you? And what do you do to muzzle that voice and replace it with the voice of your values? And actually that just made me think of something. Lightning has just struck my brain with this new idea. You know what greed silences? The voice of greed is so loud in our head that it's a lot of noise. And because there's so much noise, it silences something, a very good thing, a very good voice inside of us. It silences the voice of our emotions. And I don't mean, I feel happy, I feel sad, I need to cry, not those things. I mean, our emotions, man or woman, doesn't matter. Our emotions are always on, but they're not on in a way that brings tears to our eyes every moment, or we get this facial recognition of the emotion that we're feeling. Our emotions are always on, and they point us towards our values. They're our GPS. They help us to prioritize what we're about during the day. When I'm tempted to give greed its voice, the voice that helps me keep it at bay is the voice of my emotions. When I consider pursuing a greed, and then I consider how that would break harmony with my wife, I get a pang of emotion, just a little shot. Maybe it's fear, maybe it's grief, maybe it's loss, maybe despair. I have no idea. I get that little pang of emotion. I get a shot of it that clues me into the fact that I'm not on the right track. Our emotions are our GPS towards our values and the life that we want to live. But greed, if we give over to greed and we allow greed to have the steering wheel, those emotions, they get muted. They don't turn off. They get muted because the voice of greed in our head is so loud. If greed is having its way with you or with me, those smaller emotions that keep us in check, we can't hear them anymore. So, back to the question. What do you do to muzzle that voice of greed and replace it with the voice of your values and priorities? Okay, that's it from me to you for now. Would you please like? Would you please share? Would you please subscribe? Would you please ask for the link so we can talk about it this Sunday, either at 1:30 or at 6 o'clock p.m. for community, creating community spaces so you can connect with others and also with God. We'll see you next time.